It's no secret to anybody when they walk into my room and they just see mess everywhere. So I thought I'd do something about that. I decided to go on Amazon and pick up a few items to clean the setup up. So, while these take their sweet time to inflate, I did get a new desk because this one is very wobbly and I don't want projects on it. So let's get everything taken off this desk, put on the floor, and we have a brand new desk. Alright, so this is a lighting setup we got going on now. It's very adequately lit. Next thing we need to do, move the shelf right here. I don't know what I'm about to do with all these parts. And then we can get these up. So yeah, that about sums up creating a whole new setup. Let's get straight into the video. Feels good to finally have a nice setup. There is some cracks in the foam panels. I'm trying to work on that because every time I do something with it, the walls either expand or contract or the foam lifts and the corners lift. So I need to figure out a surefire way to get that stuff right there and that stuff up there to look a lot better. But I think I'm proud of this little setup. This video was a pain to film. It took a week and a half and I still haven't listed it. We got a faulty motherboard, an issue with one of the power supplies, and for a minute I thought the graphics card didn't work, and that would have been so devastating for me. So let's just get straight into this. So we have the 3D printed item. It's been finished and complete. It looks so much nicer than my first print. Here is the motherboard. Here's the IO chip that's printed. And would you look at that fit? Fits perfectly well. It almost looks metal, but it's not. So I think it's time to get the rest of the parts put down so I can show you what this build has to offer. So starting off for the CPU, I chose the AMD Ryzen 7 3700X with 8 cores and 16 threads and a base speed of 3.6 GHz. This should be good for playing games. Next up is the RAM. I chose some basic 16GB 3200 MHz Ballistics RAM. I'm not too sure of the exact model. I didn't do too much research into it. It was just all I can get my hands on for the price I had. Up next is a mini ITX Silverstone 500 watt Gold Plus rated power supply. This power supply is really tiny too. The main part, the motherboard. This is the ASRock A320M HTV. While yes, it is a lower end motherboard, it still should pair with the CPU. Alright, now there's a few items that are here that I didn't show you last video, and it's literally just the graphics card and the case. The case is down there. I can show you the case in a minute. The roll of paper towels is looking really scarce. Might have to grab a new one from the garage. Thankfully, this isn't as nasty as the one from last video. Alright, let's get this stood up. So for a motherboard, we're using the ASRock A320M HDV. I personally didn't want to use this motherboard, but I'm going to have to anyway. It only supports PCIe Gen 3. Our CPU is a little too powerful to be powered off a 4-pin, but it'll still work. And I think our RAM speeds will be a little underclocked compared to what they need to be. But other than that, it should still hold up if like games. Alright, so I just received some tragic news, and they didn't include the backplate. Alright, so we printed a backplate. That snapped off when screwing on. We printed another one. This one also broke. So we had to change the filament type. And eventually, after a bunch of trouble and error, we actually have a backplate on. So I think now we can get right on to installing the CPU. Install these till you hear 2 clicks. Push down, 2 clicks. So with this SSD, it's a 256 gigabyte NVMe from Coxia Corporation. Now initially this did come with this motherboard, so we're going to keep it with this motherboard. We have our little NVMe screw. I do have the RTX MX4 as usual. I'm not going to open a brand new Noctua thermal paste until I'm through with this one. So we got our thermal paste onto the motherboard. We're going to get straight into putting the CPU cooler on. It comes with some pre-applied thermal paste too. I didn't know it was that new. You already got thermal paste on there. All right, we got it nice and cleaned up. This is the moment of truth. This is what I'm scared for because 3D printing, the 3D printed brackets, this is still a new concept to me. So put one in the top, put one in the bottom. There's a switch, flick it. And just like that, our nice little 3D printed backplate has snapped. I'll be back. All right, so I got a new power supply because these cables don't reach. I'm gonna get it installed real quick and I'll show you guys afterwards because I already installed one on camera. All right, it's time to put the big beastly graphics card in here. Let's see if it even fits. Barely. Okay, hold on. After trying multiple different CPU and RAM combinations, and by multiple I just mean I had one 3800 XT and a single 2nd gen Ryzen lying around, I couldn't get the motherboard to boot. So I had to go out and trade my GTX 1060 3GB graphics card, and I got my hands on a B450. I was surprised with the amount of time it took for that trade to go through. It only took a day. So right here I'm just reinstalling that liquid cooler bracket. I modified a little bit so that I can hold the stock cooler, and I'm installing a different CPU, a Ryzen 7 3800 XT. I had this one laying on the side and it was actually $20 cheaper than the CPU I was already using, so I just decided to put that one in. Now with the Noctua thermal paste, I usually do use the RTX thermal paste, but I ran out and I had this one new in the box, so I just decided to open it and get that put right on the CPU. When installing this cooler, I just did what I usually do. I flipped the top latch down, plugged the fan in, and that was that. I installed the SSD, and now I'm just putting the computer into the case. All right, I'm gonna stop yapping until it's time to talk again. Alright, so after all that work, we finally got into Windows, and the first thing I needed to do was go straight into Device Manager and install Wi-Fi drivers so that I can connect to the network. At this point, when I tried to go on Google, after logging into the network, it wouldn't let me because the date and time was wrong. So I just went straight into the BIOS and made sure to set the current date and time. Right here, I'm just checking, making sure nothing's running hot and everything's running at, and making sure everything's blowing out the right amount of air. And I just like to poke at everything because I can't leave anything alone for the life of me. Okay, so now I'm logging in and I'm installing some drivers for the graphics. I typically like to just only install the driver and not the software. And while that's going on in the background, it gives me just enough time to do a cost breakdown. So for that motherboard you've seen, I traded it for a $40 graphics card, so that leaves us with $40. For the RAM, I only spent $30 on that. For the case, $40. For the power supply, I spent $37. For the CPU, it was only $45. For the SSD, it was $11.
For a 1TB hard drive I installed off camera, it was $0 because I ripped that straight from an Xbox. Graphics card was $100. The CPU cooler was $25, and the Wi-Fi chip was $30. Making this build cost a total of $358. If I sell it for $650, I would profit a lot. That's all for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.